storage, well, I use it myself and for my phones, mobile devices, iPhones, and just makes your life easier. And there are great benefits, cost savings, and instead of worrying about doing your backups manually, you can have everything automated. You know, on a regular basis, a scheduled basis, you will have a backup, and you can access it basically from anywhere, and it will avoid potential data loss. So just going through, what is cloud storage? Possibly the best example I could use, and what I would like to hear from other people also, the best example I can think of is taking a USB key and asking somebody else to keep this USB key for you, and that person becomes the owner of that USB key, and he safeguards the USB key, he duplicates the USB key in more than one location, and also known as, this person then becomes the provider or the owner. So it's an online storage that allows you to store pictures, videos, and files accessible through through web or app, and it's owned by somebody else, the provider. Then another good question that we normally come across is, how much storage would I need? Now, to give you an example, the average person's mobile phone, depending on the model and the make, average is plus minus, for an average user that's using social media, Instagram, WhatsApp, all kinds of messaging services, is average on 50 gig and that's a combination of pictures, photos, videos, and files. So the question would be, how many mobile phones do you have that's running out of space? Another good example would be 2 gig, so that's 50 gig. One phone is roughly average 50 gig, depending on the model also. But another good example is 2 gig or 2 GB is 1,000 images. And 20,000 Word documents is 2 GB or 2 gig. And then 5 minutes worth of high definition video is 2 gig. So the more files you have, the more storage you would need. Any questions there?
Sorry, Isaac, from my side, compression ratios. I don't know if it's in the rest of the presentation, but if you've got 50 gigs worth of data on your machine and you move that to the cloud, is your data compressed when it is moved to the cloud, which means it is not the actual 50 gig? What is the ratio of compression when you move to cloud? And is
thank you very much. That's a nice technical question, and it also all depends on the density of the file. It depends on the actual technology they are using, and it's quite a difficult question to answer. I know some of these providers are using a level of encryption, but I guess that is almost like going into a lot of detail, and I think we need to potentially look at narrowing it down into who the provider and what technology they are using. So in the corporate environment, I do know that most of the technologies does do encryption, but it can become a very complicated field to go through exactly how much encryption and the density of the pictures or the photos. But I guess for your day-to-day user, the 50 gig pictures, I don't believe there's a lot of encryption, and we can possibly have another conversation just on potentially encryption and what type of files. Hopefully that answers the question.
It does, thank you.
No problem, thank you. So just some of the providers, Google, Amazon, that's some of the big names, Apple, how do they compare, and what happens if you need more storage? So we've done a quick matrix on different providers. The first column shows you the free storage and the different providers. So if you are a high photography user, Flickr is brilliant. You can have up to 1,000 pictures, any resolution at no cost. If you are for the home user environments, what we are seeing is Apple and Amazon is possibly more of the more popular ones, and also the Google Drive solution. But Amazon has got a very interesting solution with the Amazon Prime subscription. you actually get unlimited storage. And then what we see in the more business corporate world is Box is definitely used there more, OneDrive, Google Drive, and obviously OneDrive is integrated with your emails, Office 365. It's also a version of a file sharing more for businesses and SharePoint. And obviously Dropbox is also very popular, both in the for home user type of networks and also in the corporate environment. Any questions there?
What is Knowhow?
Knowhow is a new provider in the UK. They actually provide IT services. I believe, to be honest with you, I didn't do research exactly how they started, but that's an IT service department from Carrie. If I have it correct, Carrie's PC World. I need some corrections here, but they provide, you can walk in and they provide IT services. Now, Knowhow is a new provider that came to the market, and they are a local provider, part of the Carrie's PC World group, but I can maybe potentially do some research and on the response on this webinar, put it in there.
Thank you.
Anybody got any comments on Knowhow or have more information on that?
None from me.
Thank you. So just to run through it again, if you are into pictures, Flickr is a great product, any resolution, and also the Amazon Drive gives you unlimited space with the Amazon Prime subscription. Is the cloud storage private and secure? So yes, it is, but there are a couple of things you need to do to ensure that you also safeguard yourself from potential data loss or compromise that might happen. So the first thing we always circle back to is make sure you have a backup. So it's great if this provider that's holding your USB key is making backups for you, but it's a good practice to always ensure you have an additional backup. We've seen in 2014 where Western Digital provided a cloud storage service and they were down for over a week. So a good practice is always to make sure you have additional backup, whether you are using a third-party piece of software or whether you use a company to do the backups for you. But it's a good practice. If you're using OneDrive, make sure that you have an additional layer of backup. And if it's a small amount of files, you could copy it onto a USB hard drive or onto your local workstation. Make sure you have additional backup. Regular password changes, use strong passwords, do not use predictable passwords, and especially in the home environment where you can't afford a sophisticated password management system or a two-factor or two-step authentication system, we recommend that you have different passwords for different platforms. So if you have an iTunes account and an Amazon account, try and use different passwords. Make sure they are strong and not predictable passwords. The other great potential threat might be if you have any sensitive data and without your control, the system is updating or uploading pictures into a cloud system, and it might be a good idea just to switch off and select what files do I want to have uploaded and what files do I not want to have uploaded. Then,
Isaac,
yes.
How much privacy is provided? Or, I mean, is it the same as storing, if you've got, I don't know, bank statements or something stored locally on your computer? Is it as private and as secure as storing it on Google Drive, for example?
I mean, the key thing is that you have space to your area. And what you can do is you can ensure the compromises are normally coming through a compromise of your user and password. And the platforms are built around strong security. But the key would be I guess the security or how strong it will be based on how strong your password policies are. And yes, they are perfectly safe to use. It's a technology that's been available for years. Actually, years ago, everybody is talking about cloud, but we've seen this in the early 2000s where this is not a new technology that's available. It used to be referred to as hosted services, and they just relabeled or retagged it as cloud services. It's perfectly secure. I would recommend that you do know who is the provider, and who is the provider, what's the location of the provider, and don't just use any service that has been advertised to you or is freely available. I would recommend that you always do your due diligence, make sure the location, make also sure where is the head office of this company. There's been actually recently an interesting article about a very well-known antivirus supplier, but it's never been approved by the national security. National security has never actually approved this as this is an okay antivirus to use. So you never know if you are using a provider that's actually not been known, or it's a new provider. You never know where the data might be stored. So the easiest, there are literally thousands of providers out there, but the easiest would be to actually use some of the bigger names out there and make your due diligence. Where is the data stored? Who created this piece of software?
Sorry, Isaac, are you saying that even if we use someone like Google or Amazon, that we should try and get them to tell us where the servers where they're storing the data are actually located, which jurisdictions they're in? Would they give us that information?
Well, I can answer that question. Hi, Richard. So the thing is, Google and Amazon is quite, well, especially, especially in a business environment. So I'm more referencing back to the business environment. But if you're doing it as a home user, the first question would be, where is it stored? But in a business environment, I can example, and I need some additional information on here, is that Amazon is in the UK, and so is OneDrive from Office 365 is in the UK. They have locations within the UK or within the EU, and this is more for a business environment storage solution.
Right.
I've got a question for you, and I think it kind of ties in with what Richard is asking, and it's kind of aimed at the commercial space and not the consumer. But with regards to GDPR, and if we save our files and those sort of things in the cloud, a lot of companies need to comply with certain standards that means their data cannot leave the regional boundaries of their country, for example. So how can we ensure that if we need to comply to that sort of standards, that our data stays within the EU or within Europe and it doesn't replicate to servers located outside of our control, like with AWS or Google services?
Well, I mean, all these more corporate environments or providers has got different zones that you can actually choose what is your zone and where the data is stored. The problem, I would say, is especially for the personal drive and folders, to actually, you have less control. So I guess it's a combination of due diligence, who's the provider, where do they say the data is stored, and also, regardless of where the data is stored, do they use a form of encryption? And I just want to circle back to this webinar. I don't want to go into too much security and encryption and all of that, but I think just circling back, there are two parts to it. Due diligence, who's the provider? It's well known. They have a reputation. It's not just somebody that you got to advertise for advertisement on Facebook or something. It's actually somebody well known. Where are they located? Who are the authors of this actual piece of software? And then I guess the other part that we need to do is to ensure you have strong passwords and always have a backup.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
So it's difficult to answer, and I mean, I'm happy to do research on any specific questions or any specific providers for us and go through the GDPR compliance or within the EU. I think the key is there's something you need to do regardless if they are within the M25, within London or not in London. The question would be, there's homework we need to do and to ensure that we stay safe. And then the other very important fact is especially a home user environment, is to make sure that you apply updates and you have a good antivirus. And then one more last final note is always make sure you have an extra backup. Call me the backup king if you like.
So Isaac,
so hopefully that was helpful.
Recommend that. Sorry, would you even recommend that for someone using something like Google Drive, just as a personal account, that you
Yes,
have
I
an extra
definitely.
backup?
I mean, so Google Drive has obviously got quite a positive reputation, but as I explained to you earlier, is that even Western Digital is a very large organization, and I would always recommend, whether it's Google Drive or Amazon or OneDrive, to ensure that you have an extra layer of backup. And even if you are doing it manually, just copying it onto your local workstation, just in the scenario where there's an outage, you have an extra backup. And especially there's a big danger also, and this is again more on the in a personal home environment space, of these auto updates where you have an accidental sort of overwrite. So it's there's a duplication of files, so potentially you have a later version on your phone or on the backup, and that's been overwritten by another device. So it's always a good practice just to have additional backups. Excellent, thank you. Any other questions?
I have one question, sorry to ask. What sort of cloud storage backup would you personally suggest for home use and not business?
So for home users, if we go back to the, so let's say for as an example, you have a very light, you don't have a large requirement, you just have Word documents. I would recommend that you potentially take 2 providers and you manually, especially for home users, and you don't want to commit to any additional cost, I would recommend that you, say for example, your preference is to use Dropbox. I would recommend that you have a manual copy on a regular basis to another provider. There are other providers out there that you can do automatic backups, and I can send a list of automatic backups if you're happy to commit to some sort of a cost. But I believe, and I would be comfortable to say that if you on a regular, at least a weekly basis, do some sort of a backup, you could potentially go back to encrypt, not encrypting the files, but actually compressing the files. Potentially, this the question David asked earlier, where you actually just manually copy and paste. You don't have to get anything sophisticated. It's just a manual copy from example, Dropbox to your OneDrive account. And let's say, for example, it's below 5 gig or whatever the cost might be, or whatever you're comfortable paying. I would recommend that would be a good practice. And if you don't want to pay an additional provider, it might be worth just getting a USB hard drive. Make sure you safeguard the USB hard drive, and you have a proper backup sort of program, if I can put it like that.
Okay, thank you very much. And
No problem.
Can you work on files at the same time?
I know Google Drive and actually OneDrive, this is more going into the corporate space, and I do know also from experience, Box, yes. OneDrive, yes. You can also do Google Drive has got this very popular Google Sheets that you can do Excel or spreadsheets online. OneDrive also, and I do also know that I don't believe Apple or iCloud or Amazon has got any of that. They're more geared up towards the home users, but I do definitely know the Google Drive and OneDrive, you can do online changes, almost like live changes on the document where other people can actually see the changes happening. And you could actually, there's a form of interaction. And you could see where, if somebody is updating a cell on, example, a spreadsheet. Box has got very advanced, Box as a product has also got very advanced, almost like collaboration where people are working together in teams functionality. But I'm not 100% sure. I believe from Box, you have to have an application installed on your computer to actually have that level of interaction with the files you are working on.
Okay, thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. So just circling back to this, for if you're into pictures, Flickr is a great product. Home users, obviously the more popular version is Amazon, especially with their Amazon Prime unlimited usage. And then for the corporate environment, Box, OneDrive, Google, and Dropbox. Thank you very much. Any other questions?
Not for me.
Not for me. Thank you, Isaac.
You're welcome to post or ask any direct, more technical questions afterwards, and we can maybe just do some research. As this is quite a wide field, it's very difficult to have all the answers or the exact details of all the deep level technical details of all of these providers. But I can definitely more than happy to do some research on each of these providers. If you are using any of them, please send us any questions you have.
Okay.
My apology for the video, but please remember to always have backups, especially if it's your kids' pictures. We've seen so many scenarios where people are losing data and it's devastating.
Yeah, it seems good advice.
So normally in a business environment, just circling back, final word is normally in the business environment, hopefully you have a fully managed backup service where it's monitored and looked at. But we've seen it so many times where home users are losing years of memories, and we wouldn't like to see it for anybody. We don't wish it up on anybody.
Right.
I've got a last question for you, Isaac, if you've got time.
If it's not technical, yes, of course.
No, sorry. So
if you've done your backups.
Can a virus actually spread within the cloud? Is it possible?
Yes, actually.
So you mentioned that you need a proper antivirus, and I mean that antivirus is sitting on your machine and your endpoint, which could be your phone or your laptop. But I mean, is it possible for a virus to spread within a cloud environment, or is that something that the service provider takes care of?
No, and there's a great misconception about it. You might think your internet provider is taking care of it, or your service provider is taking care of it. But the key thing is, as soon as you have your workstation, whether it's your home PC or your laptop or Mac or whatever it might be, as soon as you got access to your files, that ultimately means that if you can change a file on this web interface, that ultimately means if you have a virus, that virus can make that change, make the same changes on this storage also. And I have seen in the past where users are infected with ransomware, where the ransomware, and sorry for ransomware, is where it's a virus that basically, or it's malware that actually go and encrypt all your files, where the files on Dropbox storage got encrypted completely. And Dropbox or Amazon will not know these changes, whether they're good or not, or bad changes. So they can't provide you a form of antivirus. So yes, you are definitely in a position where there's a risk. If you have antivirus, it can affect everything, and your provider will not be able to do anything about it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thanks very much, Isaac.
Thank you,
It was a
Isaac. Have a
pleasure.
great day. Thanks, sir.
Same to you. Sorry about the video, guys.
No problem.
No problem. Thank you, guys. Thanks.
Thank you.